Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Overwatch Weekly. Not a ton of stories to talk about today, but there is one that I'm going to spend a lot of time on because it is somewhat of a big deal. So to start, we have a new set of patch notes. These patch notes are all hero updates. They were originally dropped on the experimental card, and then they got added into the game. So I'll just run through these real quick. For Ashe, her main weapon, the Viper, the magazine size increased from 12 to 15. Shots no longer queue up the next shot if pressed slightly before recovery has finished. Unscoped shots to reach maximum spread increased from 4 to 6. Unscoped shots can now be fired much more quickly after firing a scoped shot. And you can now start reloading much more quickly after firing a scoped shot. Genji's Shuriken secondary fire recovery was lowered from 0.75 to 0.65, so you can fire the 3-shot Shuriken bursts a little bit more quickly when all three of them fire at the same time. For Mei's endothermic blaster primary fire, the maximum ammo was reduced from 200 to 120, and the endothermic blaster secondary fire ammo cost was reduced from 20 to 10. I believe there was more here. Maybe I'm wrong in the original experimental card, but they changed it. But I don't think there was actually. I think that was it. Pharah's rocket launcher explosion damage. I can't talk today. Explosion damage is increased from 65 to 80, while impact damage was decreased from 55 to 40. So they're making Pharah easier to do damage with. You don't have to be as accurate, which I actually have a bit of an issue with. As someone who is bad at Pharah, I don't think that I should be rewarded for not being able to land shots, but you're doing the same amount of damage overall. A direct hit is going to do exactly the same amount of damage, but non-direct hits will do more damage as well, instead of doing less damage. And then for Reinhardt, his steadfast passive knockback resistance was reduced from 50% to 30%, which I think is a good change. I think that was needed. So I'm glad they did that. So now let's move on to the big story here, the main story, the thing that we're going to be spending most of this video talking about, and that is all of the people who are leaving the Overwatch League, because there is a lot of them. Well, I guess not the Overwatch League, the Overwatch scene. And I'll link to a number of articles in the description for you all to check out. But what we've seen is a bunch of people have announced that they are going to be quitting Overwatch for one reason or another. And some of that is people who are pro players, some of them are just streamers, whatever it may be. But to give you an idea, just to run through the list of some of the people, you have Taimu, Shadowburn, Manitin, Kefri, Visility, Hip, Tavik, Gale, TSM Gale, obviously. These are people who are well known and have a long history with Overwatch, including, I didn't even mention Leaf. There's a ton of people who, and that's not even all of them. There's a ton of people who are leaving, and I think everyone's gonna kind of look at this and be like, everybody's leaving, everybody's quitting, like Overwatch is dead, and I think that really this is an interesting thing to discuss, because there are a lot of people who have played who have been like, oh, this game's bad or whatever, and yes, it's a bad thing if there are people who are playing the game and are not really making it. If they're playing the game, they're getting to contenders and they're just not good enough to make it to the Overwatch League, and they just don't feel like continuing to play, which is understandable, because you could just try your shot somewhere else where you're going to make more money, and you're not going to play in Tier 2, which has just been treated poorly, and that's true of Overwatch and other esports as well, but Overwatch, it's particularly a problem. But the big thing, though, is most of these retirements are happening in NA in Europe, I look at this list, I don't think a single one of these people that we're pointing out here are from Korea or China. It's all people from NA or Europe. So that is not a strange thing to bring up, because the shooter genre in NA is much more diverse. People play a lot more shooters in NA than they do in, say, Korea or China. I mean, in Korea and China, you have Overwatch. I think you have PUBG, which is very popular. And you have that one CS clone that is very, very popular. But CS itself is not super popular, right? But like COD's not popular, Halo's not popular, Fortnite was never popular, Apex is not super popular from what I can tell. So now, of course, you have Valorant coming out, which I think some people are wondering if that could be the thing that, becomes more popular, that takes over in popularity. And a lot of people are going to go switch to Valorant, which I'm sure some will. But what's interesting to me is, right, when you look at the people who retired, for the most part, now there are some who this is not true, like Sugar Free, which Sugar Free's retirement is one of the most unfortunate retirements that I've seen, and one of the ones that makes me the most sad, because I think Sugar Free is such a talented player. But if you look at most of them, right, Tavik, Taimu, Shadowburn, these are guys who had their Overwatch League careers and they're gone now, right? They're past their prime. They're no longer, players who you would even see get into the Overwatch League, because their time has come and gone, and that's it. They don't really have a future in the Overwatch League anyway. So it's, for them, it's like, well, why even bother staying in the Overwatch League? Why even bother playing Overwatch when I can just, try to make a career in another game, right? When I'm not going to make a career in Overwatch anymore, right? They've hit their peak. They're going to leave, right? Those are the kinds of players that we're seeing leave for the most part. They're going to jump off the Overwatch train and join the Valorant train, or, some other game, because that is the thing that gives them their best chance at becoming somebody again, right? And that's why I think most of these players are doing it. And some of them, of course, are doing it, yes, because Overwatch is in a state that people aren't happy with. I personally don't share those feelings. As someone who plays mostly support and a little bit of tank, and I play some damage over here, here and there, but not as a main role. I was just kind of like a backup role. I think that there's a lot that goes into that with players who are leaving, right? Primarily being damage players. Taimu is a damage player. Shadowburn is a damage player. Carter from Third Impact, who is planning on leaving at the end of the season, damage player. Tavik, damage player. Leaf and Vasility, I believe, are both damage players. Now, someone who isn't is Hip. Hip is a flex support player. However, I believe that Hip's reason for leaving is not because of something with the game. I think it has more to do with health, if I remember correctly. Maybe I'm wrong. But most of the players who we're seeing leave are damaged players, right? Players who already were going to probably leave anyway because they're damage players, right? Like, they're not people who typically play tanks or supports. And that matters because those damage player skills are more transferable to a game like Valorant than they are to anything else, right? If you're a tank or support player, your skills aren't really that transferable. Now, some of them are, but a lot of them aren't. And it's a very different game. So in the West, where a lot of people who got into Overwatch got into it because they wanted to play the damage dealers and they wanted to play, the Widowmakers and all that kind of stuff, it's not really happening as much anymore. So I think that's something that's notable. But I wanted to touch upon a couple of other things, because we have two different people who kind of had their who voiced their opinions on the Overwatch situation on kind of two different spectrums. On one side, you have XQC, who I normally don't agree with, but I actually really agree with XQC here. XQC, basically on stream, said that he doesn't understand or agree with what Overwatch people are doing. He doesn't understand why people are basically leaving. And I'll read what he said. I'm not kidding. I really don't know why that people feel that they need to run a statement about them quitting a game. I don't know, like, oh guys, I am an Overwatch creator. Guys, I'm quitting Overwatch forever. F you guys. It's so like weird, dude. You look like a coward. It achieves nothing. It achieves absolutely nothing. When did I ever do that? I never did this. I'm not a hypocrite. That's the end of what he said. And I agree with him. Like, what do you accomplish by saying, like, I'm done with this game, F this game, screw Blizzard? Like, what do you accomplish? Right? Like, obviously you have people who are going to support you because they like what you do and they're going to hope that you do well wherever you go. But there's also going to be people who are Overwatch fans and who hear you say this and go like, well, that was not cool. And right? Like, someone like Carter, if you look at Carter's post, he basically is like, oh, Blizzard's a bad company, it's a bad game, all this other stuff. Like, if he ever wants to come back, no one's going to bring him back, right? Because they know that he doesn't enjoy the game. If he doesn't make it anywhere in Valorant, right? He's burning bridges to the point where if he doesn't make it in Valorant, right? Or, you know, whatever game comes out, and then moves back over to try to go pro in Overwatch again, no one's going to want him because he has burned his bridges and clearly he doesn't have motivation for the game. And he said stuff about the game and people are like, ah, well, we don't really want you because this, that, or the other thing. You don't enjoy the game, and it is what it is. And maybe some people won't really care that much, right? But I think you have to realize, like, there's so much of this where it's like, why are you burning your bridges? It doesn't help you at all. It just hurts you in the long run. The other player who said something is Numlocked, of course, formerly with the LA Valiant, but then mostly playing in Contenders. And he, after being dropped from the Montreal Rebellion, because the Montreal Rebellion cleaned house and dumped their entire roster, he was on stream and he said, I can't give away too many details, but everyone wants out. Nobody is happy with what Blizzard is doing. People want to get out of Overwatch League. Obviously, people are pulling out of Contenders. Montreal Rebellion was the first, but they definitely won't be the last to pull out. And with that, you had Montreal Rebellion's former analyst say, I am moving to Valorant. Overwatch 2 is fully dead. Getting 1K viewers max on the Contender stream isn't worth any level of investment. Right? So this to me is primarily a problem with Overwatch Tier 2. Right? Overwatch Tier 2 does not get the support that it needs, but it's also the kind of thing where, like, I love Overwatch. I love competitive Overwatch. I don't enjoy Contenders that much. And a lot of it is because one of the things that I think works so well with the Overwatch League, one, I actually really like the model that they have of region-based, city-based teams. I actually personally really like that. The other thing is, it's a much higher level play, and it means something, right? You have someone to root for. I don't really care about being like, oh, I'm going to root for Revival because, I don't know, to me, there's no reason to root for teams and Contenders unless you're invested in players. And that, to me, is the hardest way to get into an esport. It's difficult for me to watch Contenders when I'm just like, I don't really care about any of these teams. Right? I don't have any connection to any of these teams or any of these players. I have no reason to root for any of these teams, any of these players. And Tier 2 is just obviously going to have to be a bit of a secondary focus to your primary thing, which is the Overwatch League. So of course it's not going to get the same level of attention as the Overwatch League. And it's unfortunate, but that's really all there is to it. And there's not a lot you can do about it, honestly and unfortunately. And I hope that there's more that goes into the Tier 2 Overwatch scene in the future, but there's really no way of guaranteeing that for sure. But I'm curious what you think about all this stuff going on. Let me know in the comments down below your thoughts on it. You know, I think it's an interesting thing to look at. I don't think that Korea is going to be really affected by the launch of Valorant or anything like that. I think that the Korean Overwatch scene is just fine, and as long as the Korean Overwatch scene is fine, Overwatch itself is going to be fine. So that's what I have for you today. If you enjoyed, consider liking and subscribing. And of course, as I said before, let me know what you think on all this stuff in the comments down below. But I'm going to get out of here. Hope you're all staying safe. Hope you all have a wonderful week. Hope you all have a wonderful day. And I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.